Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Integrity Podcast. I'm Brandon, along with my co-host Austin, and a lot of discussion in the industry about tech shortage and techs leaving the industry, new techs not coming in. There's been a lot of talk about technicians leaving the industry and going to the other trades, such as HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and so forth. So we did a little bit of research comparing the automotive business or automotive repair business to the other trades, and I found some pretty interesting numbers. You know, if we look at the businesses as a whole, there are roughly about 250,000 auto repair businesses, and there's compared to about 120,000 HVAC businesses, 130,000 plumbing contractors, and around 100,000 electrician or electrical businesses. And the revenue share between those, you know, in comparison is pretty significant also. Automotive repair with 250,000 total businesses, their annual revenue is right around $700,000 as an average. So everything that we're talking about today is averages. You know, median wages, you know, nationwide averages. So when it comes to regional, the numbers could be, you know, different or what have you. But so all we can do is kind of compare the average numbers. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So the average revenue for auto repair business is around $740,000, $730,000, something along those lines. Where the average revenue for HVAC contractors is around HVAC businesses is around 1.3 million, so quite a bit higher. Plumbing contractors is 1.5 million is the average revenue per business. And for electrical contractors, it's around between 2.6 and 3.2 million per year that they're doing in total business revenue. There is more businesses fighting for revenue in the automotive repair business than there is in the other trades. And what I'm thinking is probably a big contributor of the number of businesses in automotive repair versus the other trades is the fact that there is a low bar of entry in auto repair. So all of the other trades have licensing that you have to go through. They have a structured apprenticeship, journeyman, master. They have to be licensed contractors, follow codes, and all of that good stuff, where the automotive repair business doesn't have any of that. I mean, there is some licensing depending on the states that you're in. Usually it's related to emissions, but for a person to go and open a business as an automotive repair shop, other than, you know, doing the standard business licensing, there isn't anything that's prohibiting them or preventing them from opening their own shop. Whereas HVAC, plumbing, electrical contractors, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that you either have to have or be a master technician in order to get your business license in order to even start the business. So I think that low barrier of entry is why there is so many automotive repair businesses compared to the other trades. When you're looking at the total revenue per industry, per trade, automotive repair shops share $183.4 billion. So that's the total revenue of all automotive repair shops is 183 billion. Electrical contractors is 160 billion. Plumbing contractors is 191 billion, and electrical contractors is 260 billion.
HVAC contractors are 160 billion.
Yeah. Is that not what I said?
You said electrical, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, HVAC contractors are 160 billion. So there are more shops that are fighting for or trying to share that total, 160 to 180 billion dollars in revenue than all of the rest of the industries. So, and that's, I think, where that low barrier of entry comes in. And I think what is happening, it does happen, maybe not all the time, but because there's a low barrier of entry, and because technicians, believe that they are underpaid, which we'll get into that they are compared to the other trades. There are quite a few technicians that decide that, the shop's charging $150 an hour and I'm only getting paid, $35 an hour or $30 an hour or $25 an hour, whatever it may be, and think, well, I've got the tools, I've got the knowledge, I can go start my own business and go mobile, rent a space, what have you, and I can charge $80 an hour and double the income or the revenue that I'm generating and put that extra in the money or in my pocket, and I'm going to have customers for days because I'm cheaper than everybody else, and they don't realize the back end of the business and all of the expenses that go along with it and everything else. On our first podcast, I said that I did that. 25 years ago, I thought, I'm a good technician, I've got the tools, I'm gonna give it a go and try it. And at 20 years old, I learned really quick that it's not all, sunshine and rainbows. There's a whole lot more to it than that. But when we compare the median hourly wage between the industries, the average automotive repair technician is $23.88 an hour. Again, this is average across the country. There's probably going to be a lot of technicians that say I wouldn't work for less than whatever it is, but a median hourly wage is $23.88 an hour, where HVAC is $28.75 an hour, plumbing is $30.27 an hour, and electrical contractors, employees are $29.98 an hour. So there is a big wage gap in between technicians across trades, I guess you could say, with automotive repair being on the low end of it. HVAC, plumbing, electrical, they have very clear defined paths in the career. You start out as an apprentice in all of the other trades. You work as an apprentice for 4 or 5 years, what have you, and then you have to take a test to move up to a journeyman. And then you work that for whatever the time period is, and then you can take a test to become a master. Well, besides ASC certifications, dealer level certifications and so forth, there is no clear defined path to go from one level to another level to another level. Because of that, it's very gray as far as what a technician is capable of. There's no structure that says this technician's an A level, this technician's a B level, this technician's a C level. It's really determination between the employer and the employee as far as how they're classified. There's no formal structure, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So there's no clear path to move up the ladder either. If you look at the work that automotive repair technicians are doing and how complicated vehicles are becoming nowadays, and you take out all of the other licensing requirements, certification requirements of the other trades, automotive repair is more complicated, in my opinion anyway, than the other trades. HVAC, plumbing, electrical, they're working on static systems. And I'm not trying to say that their jobs are easier by any means or anything along those lines. What I will say is the systems that HVAC, plumbing, electrical work on are typically very similar across everything that they're doing. So, electrical, you got an electrical panel, you've got wiring, you've got outlets, connectors, and obviously it gets a whole lot more complicated than that, but it's a system, and the system is static. Same with plumbing, same with HVAC. Whereas automotive repair, you're working with hydraulics, you're working with computers, you're working with networking, you're working with, and every manufacturer is different between them. So it's a whole lot more complicated working on vehicles than it is working on the systems of the other trades, if that makes sense.
And to be an automotive repair tech, you have to be versed in HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. Electrical a little bit in a different way than like house electrical stuff. Like you said, CAN bus networks, understanding how they work. I would say it's a little more involved, the electrical side of vehicles is anyways. I mean, I'm thinking of wall outlets, and there's probably more to it than that, but I mean, you have solenoids that are pulse width modulated, computers that are looking for crank signals and waveforms. You know what I mean? There's much more to a vehicle as far as electrical goes, and the signals they send and receive the computers.
It's not just power distribution.
Yeah.
It's data communication, and there's some of that in electrical also, nowhere near the level of cars, when computers are sending data and, you've got your 5-volt references and pull down the voltage and resistances and all of that stuff. It's definitely a lot more complicated. Mm-hmm. Another thing about automotive repair that isn't, I mean, there's some levels of work or jobs that take place in, the HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. I mean, there's some design work and, reading the blueprints and getting the approvals for the permits and doing everything to code. And so, I mean, it's not, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the other trades are easy. They're not, I think that they're easier to master. If somebody wants to go down that path, to go from an apprentice to a master, I think is probably easier in the other trades than it is in the automotive world. And in the automotive world, not all of the work that we're doing is equal either. Your maintenance, your brakes, your stuff like that is, fairly simple stuff. And even that stuff with the complication of cars and how many sensors there are and so forth, you have to know what you're doing or you can cause problems. The late model Chevys, if you don't pull the brake fluid cap off of the reservoir before you compress the calipers in, you can burn out the ABS module. So there's quite a bit of risk, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can create issues. Even at the low end, C tech, you have to have a lot of knowledge, and I honestly think that a C tech is probably equal to, a high apprenticeship, low journeyman status in the other trades, but their wages technician wages aren't reflected the same. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the market is, there's a couple things. There's a whole lot more automotive repair businesses than there is the other trades. So everybody's fighting for the dollar, it's a race to a bottom and so forth. So when you're in that atmosphere, you can't charge the customers as much. And when you can't charge the customers as much, you can't pay the technicians as much. I'm kind of going a little bit all over the place. When I say not all work is equal, you've got very simple stuff, brakes, steering, suspension, kind of the more static stuff. And then you've got your CAN issues, your electrical issues, programming events, and then you've got, I guess I would group diagnostics in with that also. And then you've got your internal engine work, timing chains, engine rebuilds, transmission rebuilds that are also complicated. And the automotive industry has almost always been, what's your door rate? It's $100 an hour, or $125 an hour, or $150 an hour. All of these levels of work from maintenance all the way to engine rebuilds to diagnostics take a different level of knowledge, risk, and warranty concerns or probability. To have one set labor rate that encompasses all of it, I think is not the right way to do it. You almost have to have a tiered labor schedule where, and I'm just using round numbers, but maybe your maintenance, your brakes, tires, stuff like that, the simple, quick, easy stuff, maybe that's $100 an hour, and I'm just using numbers, so, and every market is different. Whereas, the internal engine work like timing chains, transmission rebuild, stuff like that, would be $125 an hour, and diagnostics would be $150 an hour, because you have to have a stronger knowledge, and it's more complicated work, and there's bigger risks. If you look at diagnostics, so I would say that the majority of the work that technicians, automotive repair shops do is going to be your maintenance and brakes, steering, suspension, that kind of stuff. That's the majority of the work, and that's fairly low risk, repeatable work, pretty easy. Diagnostics is the more complicated work. Shops are judged on their diagnostics capability. Most of the time when you have a complaint or you hear a complaint about a shop is they threw this part at it and that part didn't correct the issue. It happens. I mean, you'll get some complaints that, maybe they installed my brake pads wrong or something along those lines, but from a customer perception and a business perception, the maintenance and so forth is the majority of a business's revenue, where the diagnostic capability is the majority of the reputation of the shop. So, there's a risk when it comes to that as well, that if you don't have properly trained technicians and you're trying to do diagnostic work and you're throwing parts at a car, you can get in trouble if you don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Another interesting statistic that I saw was when you look at all of the trades, the majority of technicians that are in the trades are in that C to low B level. The majority of them are. Whereas in the other trades, the majority of their workforce is in the journeyman level. So there's less apprentices, more journeymen, less masters. And in the automotive world, the majority is in that lower level. So is that because technicians aren't moving up, or is it because technicians are not giving the training that they need? What is the cause? We're not, as an industry, we're not doing a good job, according to the numbers, I mean, every shop is different, getting them from that entry level or lower level technician to that mid level. And, not every shop needs 5A technicians. Most shops are good with, 5C technicians or 3C technicians and 1 A-level technician or what have you. That's kind of, and maybe that's the fact of the matter too, is that because the majority of the repairs on cars are that lower end maintenance, there's not an opportunity to move up to that next level as well. Not only that, but there are a lot of techs out there that don't want to move up to that level because of the flat rate pay, because diagnostic is a lot of times given away, or they're given a 0.3 by the dealers to do an electrical diagnostic or what have you. The technicians are actually losing money doing those diagnostic jobs versus the gravy jobs. So, it's kind of an unfair system when you look at it from a pay scale, because the most knowledgeable people in the industry, if they're being paid flat rate, are being punished for their knowledge, which doesn't make any sense at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing is auto repair, and we handle diagnostics similar to HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. They generally do not go out to your house and tell you what's wrong with your furnace, plumbing, whatever the component is, for free. There is a trip charge, there is the time they're there, and they charge for all of it. Whereas auto repair, a lot of customers, I believe, have actually been trained by other shops that they don't charge to scan the code, and then all they did is scan the code, so we'll throw the part at it and see what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a weekly basis for me. Is I've actually had people come in and say they already diagnosed it, and I asked them how they came to the conclusion that it needed what it needed, and they said they scanned it for codes. I just told them that's not how we do things here, and if that's what they're looking for, we are not the place for them.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not putting this in your car because your scanner told it to you. I wouldn't do it to my car, my sister's car, another customer's car. That's just not how we operate. When you diagnose vehicles that way, that's how you're able to do it for free, is because you're not really diagnosing it. You're scanning a code, seeing what the computer says is wrong. It could be a handful of things. This is the most common or the cheapest. Let's try this first.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they do it for free a lot of the times.
Yeah, and a lot of times they're wrong
Mm-hmm.
doing that. And that's where I was saying before that, you know, the diagnostic capability of the shop dictates the reputation of the shop a whole lot more than the general repair work does.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're doing free diagnostics and they're, you know, it's in the last probably 10 years, the diagnostic complexity of vehicles has increased a tremendous amount, you know, and when I first entered into the industry, you know, we were going from OBD1 to OBD2, and scan tools were just starting to come into automotive repair. And, you know, at that point, because the tools were so expensive and so forth, a lot of shops charged, you know, whatever, $45 or $25 or whatever the fee was at that time just to pull the codes on it, because they spent $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 on a OBD2 scanner, and it probably wasn't that much back then. I don't remember how much it was, but you know, they had to make an investment in these scan tools to even be able to pull the diagnostic trouble codes on them. And a lot of shops charged because they had to spend the money on it. And we went to where the scan tools became more and more prominent, and now you can, you know, customers can buy a $45 OBD dongle that connects to their phone and can tell them the code, and then you got them plugging in the codes into ChatGPT and having ChatGPT try and diagnose it, but they don't realize that 90% of the time ChatGPT doesn't know what the hell it's talking about.
Like the last time I used it was a focus wiper issue. Basically, you got power and ground to the wiper motor, but then it uses the LIN bus to activate it. There's a LIN bus, two separate motors and transmissions, basically a LIN bus wire connecting the two. So what I put into ChatGPT was there was like 29 mega ohms of resistance from the LIN line in to the master module, if you will, the one that sends the LIN line or the LIN message to the other module. There's an in and an out, and I measured continuity across the two of them, because basically the windshield wipers wouldn't work at all, and I had a LIN. It had power, ground, and a LIN message from the car. So I mean, at that point, I just wanted to verify that I wasn't missing something, and it had like 29 mega ohms of resistance. And I put it into ChatGPT and said, what resistance should I have across 3 and 4? And it told me 0.2 ohms or 0.3 ohms. It basically told me, it gave me a result as if those were the wires for the motor inside, not the LIN line, the communication network. And I actually corrected ChatGPT, told them this is not the motor, this is the LIN line in and out, pins 3 and 4. I even gave it the wire colors, and it literally said, oh yes, you're correct.
Right.
And then basically told me 29 mega ohms resistance was no good, which I pretty much already knew. That's pretty much open circuit, but there was no in the diagnostic sheet from Ford or the process, and the only time I use it for resistance values, all I was trying to do was hit the nail home, essentially. I just wanted to know that 29 mega ohms of resistance was probably too high. And I mean, the LIN lines, data communication lines, don't need, it is very low amperage, so they don't need a lot of resistance, or they don't need much continuity to work, whereas a power and ground, I mean, you want continuity there, you want low resistance there.
Sure.
That was a little bit off topic, but to show that ChatGPT really, and I have several tabs, several ChatGPT things saved that I've used in the past that are incorrect.
It's kind of fun to play with ChatGPT a little bit, you know, and especially when you're working a complicated problem, you know, that information isn't available for. You know, one thing that comes to mind that I did was we had a 2010 Equinox that was stuck in OnStar demonstration mode, and the telematic control module can't communicate because I think it's 3G and there's no 3G towers anymore or something like that. And there's no update available from GM. There's no information at all. You know, the only way, even talking with the manufacturer, the only way to shut that message off is to hit the OnStar button, have OnStar answer, and say, hey, take this out of demonstration mode. And you can't do that because the telematics control module can't communicate because it's a 3G network, and there's no infrastructure for it anymore. I asked ChatGPT, you know, there's, I don't know, hundreds of thousands probably of Chevy Equinoxes out there that have OnStar. I can't imagine that there's not a way to get that out of demonstration mode. So I asked ChatGPT, how does one, when you can't communicate with a cell tower anymore and it gets stuck in demonstration mode, how do you get the car out of demonstration mode? And super knowledgeable. I mean, if you read what ChatGPT said, you would think, holy cow, this is exactly what I needed. Because it's telling you to go into SPS2 and it's telling you to, you know, make this adjustment or reprogram this module and everything else. Absolutely everything that it said was wrong. Absolutely everything that it said, it hallucinates. It tells you things that doesn't exist. And I don't remember what the circumstance was, but I played around with it for about 45 minutes or an hour, went into SPS2, you know, attempted to do some of the things. You know, I think one of the things was it wanted to reflash a module differently. What it said didn't make any sense. And what it said to do is not even possible with SPS2.
Yeah,
So,
I remember the drop downs, the stuff that was supposed to be there wasn't there. And that SPS2, that's franchise dealer level software. I mean, there is nothing above that,
right.
as far as I know. But I mean, that's OEM Chevy software. So if that can't do it, then you're pretty much SOL.
Right. Yeah. And so we ended up disconnecting the telematics control module. The only reason that we didn't want to do that was because that telematics control module also links is how you connect a cell phone to it so that you can talk, you know, hands-free basically. And the customer, you know, wanted to try and keep that. So that's why we spent so much time trying to correct the OnStar demonstration mode. So we essentially gave the customer the option of, we can leave it the way that it is, so you got a message every time you start your car that it's in demonstration mode and you'll still be able to use your phone, or we've got to disconnect the telematics control module so that that message stops, but you're not going to be able to connect your phone via the hands-free of the car. The point is that shops are not charging for diagnostics when they should be, and some of that stems from the fact that customers can buy these cheap OBD tools and diagnostic, I wouldn't even call them diagnostic tools, code scanners, and try and use ChatGPT and so forth, and all of a sudden they think that they've got the answer before they ever come to the shop, and that's just not the case. Someday maybe, I mean, AI is getting more powerful every day, but it's still as long as it's hallucinating and it's giving false information, and you have to train the customers that you might be talking to a super intelligent computer or something like that, but it doesn't know. It doesn't have the answers.
It's not correct all the time.
No, probably not correct most of the time.
Yeah, I would agree most of the time.
So based on the fact that automotive repair is as complicated, maybe possibly more complicated than the other trades, I think it's safe to conclude that an entry-level technician in any of the other trades is starting out at $28 an hour. And I think that in order for the industry to attract and retain technicians, in my opinion, flat rate needs to go away and actually be paid similar to how the other trades are paid. That's why technicians are leaving, is because they want more money, and there's a lot of flat rate technicians out there that love flat rate and they make a killing on it. But the majority, we posted that video about flat rate, and everybody is all up in arms about, if you adjust book times or anything along those lines, then you're screwing the technician and everything else. And I agree with that. But the automotive industry has an issue when any industry has an issue when you have employees dictating how the business operates.
Employees influencing business decisions.
Yes.
Is an issue.
Yes. Obviously, the culture, everything else, all plays into the business. And if you've got a poor culture because of flat rate, or because technicians think that you're pulling money out of their paycheck, which happens with flat rate, that's not a good culture, and that affects the business at the end of the day. So the conclusion of all of this research that I've done in the last few days is there's no doubt that technician wages need to go up. For technician wages to go up, auto repair shops have to actually start charging for the work that they're doing, and not racing to the bottom, not throwing coupons in front of people, because sure, the other industries and other trades will have, maybe maintenance specials or what have you, but they don't discount their work, and they also don't sell it on a parts and labor scale, or this is how much the part is, this is how much the labor is, and this is going to be what your total amount is. They're not selling a commodity, they're selling a solution. You need a furnace, it's going to be $6,000. There's a lot of regulations in auto repair, or state laws or what have you, that you have to detail parts and labor and all of this good stuff, which is fine, but you can detail that on the invoice. But it needs to be, auto repair needs to focus more on customer solutions than it does on parts and labor.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind too is auto repair is, that has a reputation for taking advantage of customers, but your HVAC technician and your electrical guy, and you have an issue with your furnace, does it really need a whole furnace? It happens across all trades. It's not just auto repair. There was actually an advertisement I heard on the radio. Basically, long story short, it said if someone quoted out a whole new furnace for your home, give us a call and we'll give you a second opinion. So it happens. That's evidence right there. That is one business acknowledging that is a possibility and that it does happen.
Yeah.
Through an advertisement.
Yeah, and I don't think, we've said this before, most shops I don't believe are crooked. There are shops out there that are overselling and quoting out things that don't need to be done. We just had a Ford Expedition come in that they quoted every flush under the sun, just let's throw everything at them and see what sticks, and if we get one of the five, then great, that's revenue, which, I think that's bad business practice myself. I think you focus on the problem that the customer is having. You can talk about maintenance, absolutely, but to start going to customers and say, I don't know if you've had all of these services done and you need to have every fluid in your vehicle flushed, I think that's a poor way of doing business.
Not only that, they quoted out a valve cover because of the VCT solenoid that was seeping around it, and they said the right front upper ball joint was loose. And we loaded the suspension. I mean, checked it several different ways. There was absolutely no play in the upper ball joint.
Yeah. So I mean,
and when we called them, I literally told Alan to iterate that. I mean, you can do it if you want, but you could. It's just seeping. It is not something that needs to be done. And there's absolutely no play in the upper ball joint. And to change every fluid in your car just because it hasn't been done or they don't know if it's been done, it is asinine to me.
Well, it's a maintenance decision is what it is. I mean, some customers, we have customers, one customer that, he wants his fluids changed on the service intervals every single time. And I'm all for that. Absolutely, fluids should be changed. But if you're going to have, especially a first-time customer come into your shop for an oil change, and you say that, okay, we did your oil change, Mr. Customer, you need an air filter and you need your transmission fluids flushed and you need your brake fluid flushed and you need, your coolant flushed and all of these flushes, what's the perception of that customer? They're just trying to sell me stuff. They're nickel and dime me, and
yeah, not only that, it should be mentioned too, that was a franchise dealer, a Ford dealer.
Yeah.
I mean, so it doesn't matter where you go. And I've honestly noticed a lot more stuff like that from franchise dealers than independents myself.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of it comes back to that flat rate too, where, the technicians are, and it's not even technicians' faults, because a lot of times it's the service advisors that are making these recommendations also. Just, let's again, throw everything at them and see what sticks. And, if we can get one of the 5 flushes that we're recommending, then we're generating revenue. And again, I'm not opposed to changing fluids. Fluids should be changed, but I think it's worth having a conversation and finding out what the customer wants. But to tell them that they have to do it because they're, if you don't do your transmission flush, you're going to ruin your transmission. Sure, over the course of 150 or 200,000 miles, that's absolutely the case. But, to recommend it, everything all at once, and ball joints that don't need to be replaced. And, a seep is a whole lot different than an active leak. And, there are some customers that would say absolutely replace that valve cover. A seep is a seep and it's leaking, it should be replaced. Some customers will want to go to that level. Other customers will say, well, what do you mean by it's seeping? Well, there's no active leak. It is not actively losing it. There's just a little bit of oil residue on the seal. So at this point, it's something to keep an eye on. Our recommendation would be to keep an eye on it, clean it off. Let's see if it looks the same the next oil change, or is this over the course of 150,000 miles that this thing has started to look like that. Educating the customer is a very important part of automotive repair, and letting the customer decide if they want to change that valve cover. Nothing wrong with mentioning that it's got a seep, that there's a little bit of, we see oil residue. Oil should stay inside the engine. It shouldn't be escaping. But is it something critical that needs to be done right now? No, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will not affect day-to-day driving, and that will not cause a failure or leave you stranded on the side of the road.
Right. Technician wages need to increase. There is no doubt about it. In order to keep up with the other trades, technician wages have to increase. But in order for technician wages to increase, if you look at the cost of labor between the other industries, it's pretty comparable. The cost of labor in automotive repair versus HVAC contractor, plumbing, electrical contractors, the businesses are making the same amount of money, generating close to the same amount of labor cost as a percent of revenue across the board. So, It's not that the automotive repair industry is paying technicians less and throwing the extra money in their pocket. That's not the case at all. They're all consistent as far as the cost of labor versus percentage of revenue. The problem is there are so many businesses out there, probably because of the lack of licensing, the lack of, certifications or what have you, that the barrier to entry is so much lower in automotive repair, so there's so many more shops, and it's a race to the bottom, And I'd like to say I think that's changing. It's changing from our perspective anyway. We charge a fair labor rate, but even at our labor rate, we pay our technicians higher than the industry standard is. They're making, closer to, pretty close to what the other trades are making in our business. But in order for the whole industry to get to a point where automotive technicians are making a comparable wage to the other trades, labor is going to have to go up. And that can be a combination of raising the labor rate, maybe putting a labor matrix in place, or just doing category-specific labor. I mean, we have a higher diagnostic labor rate than we do our general repair labor rate. And I almost think that we need to go a step further and have 3 labor tiers, one for diagnostic, one for internal engine, transmission repairs, and one for your general maintenance. And then you have the technicians that are capable of doing those different levels of repair work, and then technicians can get paid based on the level of repair that they can do. And as you go from a C-Tech, where you should be making, in my opinion, $28 to $32 an hour, because it should be equal with an entry level in the other trades, and then a B-Tech should be, $32 to $40 an hour, and C-Tech should be $50, or I'm sorry, A-Tech should be, $45 to $60 an hour. I mean, it's based on the knowledge of the technician should determine how that technician gets paid. But the race to the bottom mentality and the discount mentality and the no charge for diag mentality and the mentality of the automotive industry as a whole is what is preventing that. So until that changes, you're not going to see technician wages change, and you're going to see technicians leaving, not entering the field, and continually being keyboard warriors on TikTok. There's going to be a lot of kickback on raising labor rates from auto repair shops, I think, too, because they're going to say customers won't pay that, And obviously, customers are visiting automotive repair shops 2 to 4 times a year. They're getting their oil changes, they're doing maintenance and stuff like that. So 2 to 4 times a year is probably average that a customer is bringing their car in to have service done on it. Whereas the other trades, you're talking 1 time every year, 1 time every 2 years. Electricals probably 1 time every 3 years. So there's more opportunity to disappoint the customer in the automotive repair world because they're coming more frequently. The low barrier of entry, the untrained technicians that are working in the field, the untrained owners, the untrained service advisors, is diminishing the value of good automotive repair shops.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a good example of, like you mentioned, our diagnostic labor rate is heavier than our just normal auto repair is. That Dodge with a 5.7 that wouldn't start, that was towed, and I spent an hour on it, got it running. Basically just got flooded somehow, needed to be cleared out, but in that hour using a scope, I knew compression was good within about 5 minutes. I mean, using a scope, and then I got it running. It was misfiring on 4 cylinders. I already knew compression was good. I've seen broken valve springs on them, and that obviously wasn't the case because they had compression. Used the scope, checked injector signals from the computer, checked ignition coil signals from the computer, making sure that they were firing. I could actually, using the scope, I could see that the cylinders that were misfiring were burning somewhat. So after I did, there was other stuff that I did, but I took it for a drive and everything cleared up.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
And that truck was sitting for a long time too before it came in. We towed it in because it had been sitting.
Yeah, yep. But I mean, that's a good example of in that hour. I mean, I didn't use a mechanical gauge and spend 2-3 hours going along every cylinder. I used a scope, used an amp clamp, and measured the starter current as it was going, as each piston was coming up on the compression stroke.
Relative compression
and then
cost, yeah.
looking at the waveform and looking for anomalies. I mean, and that takes 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So I'm familiar with how to use those kind of tools, so I can tell you a lot about your vehicle in about an hour.
Yeah, and the problem is a lot of businesses, a lot of repair businesses aren't to that level yet, and that's where you get the technicians. You know, and we're hypothesizing or we're guessing when I say that, you know, that very well could have went to another shop and they could have threw everything at it, plugs and wires and, you know, just threw a bunch of parts at it when you verified basically that it didn't need parts thrown at it. It needed to be
driven.
Yeah,
yep. And I did pull plugs, looked at them. They were carboned up, but they weren't like bad. But I came to the conclusion it needed to be driven. I drove it, and it's been fine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the power of diagnostics. I mean, I came to the conclusion that there was no reason the cylinder should be showing a misfire, and after driving it, it cleared up. I mean, that was the conclusion I came to. It didn't need anything. It just needed to be cleared out.
Yeah. From a customer perception standpoint and charging a higher labor rate, until shops and technicians get the training in order to be able to accurately diagnose and repair vehicles and solve customers' problems, that's where most of the customer perception, you know, negative customer perception comes into play, is because shops aren't diagnosing the cars properly. I think that the majority of customers, I mean, our labor rate is higher than anybody else in town as far as I know, and we have no problems having customers come in, you know, and you can charge a higher labor rate if you're charging, if you're providing the value behind it. I mean, we don't have, and when I say we don't have comebacks, obviously we have part failures and we have stuff like that, and things do happen. We're not a perfect shop by any means. I mean, there are comebacks, but when we have comebacks, we take care of the customer, and the comeback rate is extremely low.
Yeah,
And
it's not
because,
very often at all that we have comebacks.
yeah, and it's because we're doing quality diagnostics, we're verifying what something needs prior to doing it, and our customer perception from our customer's point of view is high. People refer us and say, hey, go to these guys because they know what they're doing. And when you get to that point, you can charge a higher labor rate and you can pay your technicians better. Until the industry stops with the race to the bottom and actually starts caring about their craft and not just throwing parts at cars, when that happens is when we're going to raise the industry and be able to pay technicians more. If shops would just get out of their own way and start just learning and understanding how to run a business and understand how important training is, it could be turned around pretty quick. The excuse that customers won't pay that is not a valid excuse.
If you think the customer won't pay that, you're probably not worth that. As hard as that is to probably hear.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a good point.
make yourself worth that.
Exactly. And I think there's a saying, if you think you can't, you're right. You can't, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, you know your value and have to raise the bar.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a lot of fun working on modern cars. I enjoy it. I'm efficient with it. I don't have, I mean, you get the occasional car, everyone does, you beat your head up against the wall trying to figure it out, but I have fun with those kind of issues. I mean, I like a vehicle that is not a pattern failure, has a goofy one-off issue, and you'll probably never see it again. Those are my favorite things to work on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of diagnostic techs enjoy that very much as well. I mean, I think that they genuinely love solving problems and they love figuring out complex issues. The problem is they're not being compensated properly for it primarily because, and I shouldn't say all of them, but primarily because of the flat rate system, it's costing them money in order to do those jobs. You and I are business owners, we own the business, we're essentially on flat rate because whatever we bill the customer is, you know, what the business is making. There's many times that you'll invest more time into a vehicle than what is quoted out. And that's a hard thing to overcome because I am constantly telling you that you need to stop, you need to call the customer, tell them where you're at and what else needs to be done, but you're so focused in getting that job figured out that you don't want to take the time to do that. And that's fine from your standpoint, you know, and it's a difficult thing when you really genuinely want to fix the car versus charging the customer. And I understand in the flat rate world that it's costing the technicians money, it's costing you money when you do that also. The problem is that's your decision to make because at the end of the day, it's you / the business that is being affected when you don't call the customer and get a more approval time. But from a diagnostic technician point of view, when you don't get that additional time added on, they're not getting paid for it. And diagnostic technicians should 100% be paid for the time that they're investing on the car. Their knowledge and their ability to actually create a solution for the customer makes them not an easy person to find.
Yeah, the mindset for me, like going back to the BMW example earlier this week, just for a backstory, it's jumped around shops the last 3 years. It's an 83 633 CSI, had an 88, 89, that era motor, so it was replaced. They were also told that the wiring harness and a computer for an 89 was put in it. It supposedly did run at one point. When we got it, it didn't run. And this was over the course of 3 years jumping around shops trying to make it right. When we got it, it took me about an hour and a half to make it run. Someone put a fuel pump in it and wired it backwards. So I pulled the pump out, cut and spliced the wires the right way, and then it would start, but it wasn't right. And after doing more looking, the wiring harness and the computer was still for a 633 CSI. They were trying to use components from the 88 and make it work with that computer, and like stuff like the front crank sensor, 62 teeth missing. It uses one sensor to verify TDC and know when to send injection pulse. You know, I mean, all those things. They had that all rigged up, wired in, but it used two sensors in the bell housing from the 633, and the computer was actually using that. So why they were trying to make the front work with the old computer that wasn't able to interpret the logic, you know what I mean? The signal it was receiving. So there's a handful of issues like that, and I went past my time on that because, one, I got it running, and then I got to the conclusion that they tried using 88, 89 accessories for the 83 computer, and it's not capable of receiving and interpreting those signals correctly, and it's running the wrong fuel map from. Sure. It'll run, it won't idle very good. It's just running an incorrect fuel map. It doesn't have the data that computer needs. If they were to do it that way, what they needed to do was swap that 88 engine as a long block and use all the accessories from the 83.
Sure.
That's what they needed to do, but they started mixing stuff. So it just needs to go back to an 83 is what it needs.
Right.
It needs an 88 long block. All the accessories need to be 83. I mean, and it's a matter of figuring out what has been changed, what has been done. I was looking at it, there's several stuff that's been rewired. I mean, it's a can of worms, but when I came to the conclusion I did, that was when I called them and said, at this point, I can see that it's hours and hours, but this is the direction we have to go in if you want us to keep going.
Yeah.
But that's a good example of kind of my mindset when I go past it is, I think, all right, well, I just found that took me an hour and a half. It doesn't run right. What else was done wrong somewhere else? And
yeah, you just want to keep plugging along and find the solution or find what the problem is. So,
yeah,
it's an easy thing to do. I guess my takeaway would be shops need to stop giving away diagnostics. I think that it would be a good idea to define labor categories and charge different labor rates for different jobs, because a brake job labor is not the same as the diagnostic labor. It's, you know, two different things. Advisors need to be trained. If you're going to change the labor times, advisors need to be trained to be able to discuss, you know, the different labor times. Honestly, I think we need to start pricing jobs. We still have to put parts labor, the detail on the invoices, but when we're talking to customers about fixing their vehicle, we need to be selling the solutions and not parts and labor. You know, this is what you brought your car in, this is the problem it was having, this is what we need to do in order to solve your problem, and start talking about solutions rather than it needs this part in it, and you know, it takes this much labor to do it. So I guess time will tell. It's the automotive industry is going to have to change. Otherwise, you're going to continue to have technicians leaving and no new technicians coming into the field, because the sentiment now is, for the most part, that, you know, technicians are telling other people that are thinking about coming into the industry, don't do it. And this is not an easy job, and it's hard on your body. I mean, it's physically demanding, it's mentally demanding, and quite frankly, the pay at this point is not what it needs to be, but it's not as bad as everybody makes it out to be. It really isn't. And if you have a passion for it and you have a drive to fix things, I don't think that there's a better industry that you could be in my opinion.
As long as you go to a place that is a good place to start. Like if you go to a shady shop and start and learn there, I mean, you don't really have to be taught how to take nuts and bolts apart and put them back together, but it's the diagnostic, the actual troubleshooting of vehicles. To find a place that has someone that you can learn off of,
Yeah.
that would be the place to go.
Yeah. Well, that was another episode of the Automotive Integrity Podcast. I want to thank you guys for watching, and remember, cars are complicated, but integrity shouldn't be. Until next time.